Yo, what up? Hello Ego here. I'm going to show you how to split up samples not based on frequency, but instead based on their dynamics. So being able to process different parts of the sound based on how loud or how soft they are and how to separate those elements from each other in a much faster, more intuitive way that will help you to move your workflow right along. But first off, if you find this tutorial useful and you want more delicious tidbits and gems of knowledge like this, you can head over to my Patreon, where I am always dropping sample packs, tutorial videos, track review. I'll even do a sample pack just for you, custom, with my delightful modular over here, as well as private lessons. So if you find this useful and you want more information like this, head over to my Patreon. The link is in the description down here. So back to Ableton. Let's go ahead and check out this sample. There's a little cashmere break loop, and I chose this to demonstrate because the snares are very sharp and loud, right? And maybe I'm like, hey, I don't want those snares to be so sharp. Or maybe I want to add reverb just to the snares. Or maybe I want to filter just the lows out of the lows out of just the hi-hat, something like that. So instead, what I would do, instead of doing this, I can come in here and be like, okay, let's chop all the snares out like a friggin' plebe over here. Just lame, boring, doing that. That's fine. You can do that, and then you have your snares, and that's cool. That's your prerogative. But there's a smarter way, and I like to work smarter, not harder. And we do that using the gate device. The gate, what this will do, gates will allow everything above the threshold through, and it's going to work well for this example because the snares are so much louder than everything else in this example. I can go ahead and I'm going to turn the return down. I don't need that right now. There we go. Now you can see that as the snare volume passes the threshold, we hear the snare coming through. I'm going to turn the floor down. The floor basically just sets how loud the stuff that is being turned down is. I want it to be totally muted. I don't want any of those hi-hats coming through. There we go. I'm going to turn the attack down so I don't damage the front end transient of this snare, and I'm going to mess with the release time, and I'm going to listen until I just hear the first of the hi-hats coming through, just to get a little bit of that hi-hat tick in there and then pull it back because I want to get as much of the snare as I can get without having any of the hi-hats. So right there is pretty good. I feel like right around 60 milliseconds or so. Now, I've set myself up, so you're like, okay, well, that's great. I got the snares coming through, but what about the rest of the hats? Well, that's where this little flip parameter comes in. Well, if you hit flip, what that does is instead of allowing only sounds that are above the threshold to come through, it allows only sounds below the threshold to come through. So you can hear there, we've got everything but the snare. Now, you got a little bit of like the snare reverb. You can't do anything about that. That's fine. This sample just happened to have some reverb on the snare already. But the majority of the snare is just totally chopped right out. So I can combine these two. I can get one gate. Let's group this up. And I'm going to duplicate the chain. So it's the same gate on each chain, but on the bottom one, I'm going to hit flip. And I'm going to call this one, I'll call the top one snare. Snare. Call the bottom one everything else. Okay, so I just got my snare here. And I got everything else down here. And when I combine the two of them, I hear my loop just about as it was before. Right? No difference, really. That's going to allow me to process these snares independently from the hats. Like, let's say I want to add a reverb just to the snare here. I can do that like that. Or let's say I want to add an EQ8 and cut some of the lows of the hats. I can now do that. And I can keep the snare from being affected by that high pass filter there. So yeah, and this also is helpful. Let's turn off these effects here. This is helpful to extract different parts as well. Let's go ahead and make two audio channels. Call this one snare. Call this one hats. And I'm going to set the audio to be taken from channel 1, the break, but I'm going to set this up to come from snare post mixer. I'm going to set this one come from everything else post mixer. I'm going to set both of these to record, and now when I record it, you can see I've extracted a nice clean snare, and I've extracted some nice clean hats, like so. So you can do this with a bunch of different sounds. You can even get really experimental with it. Like if you have, I don't know, let's just try finding like a melodic sound of some sort. Here's some weird sound design I've done. Very strange stuff that's very highly frequency differentiated. I don't know, that's not the great way to put that. But let's take a listen to what it sounds like. Probably dumb, but you never know. Okay, cool. I'm going to record a little bit of this. Well, no, let's not record it. That's past the point. Let's go ahead and set our threshold up. So first things first, I'm going to delete the previous gain gate that I have here because I want to set this up in a new way. Okay, I want just the peaks to come through on this one. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to hit flip on the bottom one. And now if I record this, and like I said, I don't want to record it. I just want to play it. I can get just little bits of the sound. Or just everything underneath that. It's kind of weird, right? Like you don't know what you're going to get. Or some human speech or singing. Let's find acapella. Maybe I shouldn't do an acapella. I think that YouTube might flag me if I do that. So yeah, anyway, hopefully that gives you some ideas, right? It's very practical, both from a sound design standpoint and in my situation, probably would use it more for like a mixing or independent processing type standpoint. But I use this technique all the time. I think it's really helpful. Like I said, if you like this and you want to learn more, check out my Patreon. I would love to see you there. And yeah, hopefully you found this helpful.